we're just trying to figure out how to use ChatGPT and like find the 3 use cases. But you have to understand that governments and tech leaders are looking way beyond that. They're seeing an explosion of intelligence that we are not currently set up infrastructure wise to support, but they envision intelligence being absolutely everywhere. And that's the part that I lose sleep over. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Show, the podcast that helps your business grow smarter by making AI approachable and actionable. My name is Paul Roetzer. I'm the founder and CEO of Marketing AI Institute, and I'm your host. Each week, I'm joined by my co-host and Marketing AI Institute Chief Content Officer, Mike Kaput, as we break down all the AI news that matters and give you insights and perspectives that you can use to advance your company and your career. Join us as we accelerate AI literacy for all. Welcome to episode 108 of the Artificial Intelligence Show. I'm your host, Paul Roetzer, along with my co-host, Mike Kaput. We are recording this one on Friday, August 2nd. We're doing a little bit early this week because I'm out of the office on Monday. Actually going to be with my friend Joe Polizzi, who's got his Orange Effect Foundation, an amazing foundation. And so we have a fundraiser all day long. So we'll be out on the golf course with Joe and that whole crew. So check out Orange Effect Foundation. It's an amazing organization. So we have some fascinating stuff to get through today. Like the voice stuff from OpenAI is like, I'm having a hard time processing the potential impact of this. We've got some new stuff on the chip war. We've got some productivity study from Microsoft. We have earnings from Microsoft and Meta and others. So a lot's been going on this week. Oh, and then figure humanoid robots, Mike. We're going to talk. I don't even know if you saw my note about that one. It just happened this morning. So I'm going to talk a little bit about humanoid robots because they may be coming sooner than we think. So today's episode is brought to us again by the Marketing AI Conference, MAICON. Our 5th annual MAICON is coming up in Cleveland, September 10th to the 12th. There are 69 sessions. I counted. Last week I said on the podcast more than 60. So I counted this morning. There are actually 69 total. We have 33 breakouts across 2 tracks, so applied AI and strategic AI, 16 AI tech demos, 10 main stage general sessions and keynotes, 5 lunch labs, 3 pre-conference workshops. I'm teaching one. Mike's teaching one. Our friend Jim Stern is teaching one. And 2 mindfulness sessions with Tamara Morawski, our director of partnerships, who also teaches yoga and mindfulness. So it's going to be an amazing lineup. Like I was actually sitting there looking through, I was like, if I was an attendee, I wouldn't even know how to pick which breakouts to go to. So if you're connected to me on LinkedIn, I actually put up just a sample of a bunch of the sessions, but you can go check out the agenda. So go to maicon.ai. That's MAICON.ai. You can use pod 200 to save $200 off of your MAICON pass. Again, that is coming up September 10th to the 12th, about 30 some days, depending on when you're listening to this. We are only about 30 some days out from the event. And I know Mike and I are both already starting to work on the workshops and the talks. So I'm doing the Road to AGI as my opening keynote. Mike's doing one of the closing talks, 30 AI tools in 30 minutes, which is always a fun one. It's action-packed. So check that out. And again, we'd love to have you join us in Cleveland, September 10th to the 12th, maicon.ai to get registered. And don't forget to use that pod 200 promo code to save $200. All right, Mike, OpenAI and voice was the big news of the week.
Yes, it was, because OpenAI is finally starting to roll out its voice assistant feature for ChatGPT, which had been previously teased and then delayed due to addressing some potential safety concerns. So the company is making this feature available to a small group of paid ChatGPT Plus customers, and it is going to eventually be rolling this out to all ChatGPT Plus users. Now, this voice assistant has 4 preset voices, and in response to copyright concerns, OpenAI has made sure it is going to prevent those voices from doing any impersonations of specific individuals. We had a little bit of controversy with that right around the release of the announcement of this feature. And they're also implementing features to prevent the generation of copyrighted audio content, such as music. Now, If you recall, we actually covered this feature when it was initially showcased in May as part of the GPT 4.0 update announcement, which enhanced the model's ability to handle text, audio, and images in real time. So the company at the time had initially kind of planned to release the voice feature in late June, but then they postponed it. They said there were safety measures and improvements that they needed to make before unleashing this on the broader world. So we are going to gradually see people getting access to this as we get into the fall here. However, there are some features that were demoed during the initial event, like video and screen sharing capabilities, that appear to still be in development without a set launch date. So, Paul, first up, like what have been kind of your initial thoughts of this new and improved voice mode? The initial demos are pretty interesting, either from things you've seen that users with access have been posting or kind of your own experience so far.
Yeah, the demo was certainly impressive back in May, and the question is always with these demos is how good is it really going to be when we actually get the product? And I have seen people posting videos that I would say are somewhat shocking in how good this thing is. So, if you haven't seen these videos, the thing is able to change its tone, inflection, accent, integrate sound effects into its voice, convey emotion, continue when it's interrupted. You stop it and immediately picks back up. It's somewhat uncanny, like how human like it is. And the more I see these examples, the harder time I have believing that the current model, this 4.0 model that we're all using in ChatGPT, is actually what's powering this thing. Um, it just seems like it has way more capability than anything we've interacted with before. So I want to rewind back for a minute to May 13th, 2024, when OpenAI published their Hello GPT 4.0 article. And so this was introducing the model, Mike, as you were kind of highlighting. So I'm going to read a few excerpts from this, and I want to add a little context as to why I think we're seeing something maybe more significant than what people realize is happening. So these are the excerpts. I'm just going to kind of read from this. So it says, we're announcing GPT 4.0. Again, this is May 13th, 2024. Our new flagship model that can reason across audio, vision, and text in real time. GPT 4.0, the O stands for Omni, is a step towards much more natural human computer interaction. It accepts as input any combination of text, audio, image, and video, and generates any combination of text, audio, and image outputs. When we get into the voice component, it said it can respond to audio inputs in as little as 232 milliseconds with an average of 320 milliseconds, which is similar to human response time in a conversation. Um, Said GPT-4 was especially better at vision and audio understanding compared to existing models. Prior to GPT 4.0, and this is explaining how the voice model is able to do what it's doing. Prior to GPT 4.0, you could use voice mode to talk to ChatGPT. So you and I can go in right now, we can talk to ChatGPT, but we don't have this new version. So it's saying the one that all of us have and have been using talk to ChatGPT with latencies of 2.5 seconds when you were using the GPT 3.5 model and 5.4 seconds for GPT-4 on average. So way slower, obviously, than 232 milliseconds.
Mm.
To achieve this, and this is why it takes 5 seconds, voice mode is a pipeline of three separate models. So when you and I talk to ChatGPT, and I would imagine this is probably kind of how Siri works. I haven't really thought about that, but historically, how these voice models have worked. So one simple model transcribes the audio to text. So you and I speak, ChatGPT turns that audio into text. So there's a model to do that. GPT 3.5 or 4 takes it in text and outputs text. And then a third simple model converts the text back to audio. So there was three models that were running behind the scenes to do a single response to your query, basically. This process means that the main source of intelligence, GPT-4, loses a lot of information. It can't directly observe tone, multiple speakers, background noises. It can't output laughter, singing, or express emotion. So very clearly explaining the limitations of prior voice technology, basically. With GPT 4.0, it says we trained a single new model end to end across text, vision, and audio, meaning that all inputs and outputs are processed by the same neural network. Because GPT 4.0 is our first model combining all these modalities, we're just scratching the surface of exploring what the model can do and its limitations. And then it talks about how they've gone through extensive red teaming. Now, again, this was back in May. And what we now know is they went through a lot more red teaming since May to bring this
Mm.
to market. Um, had experts in domains such as social psychology, bias and fairness, and misinformation to identify risks that are introduced or amplified by newly added modalities. We use these learnings to build safety. Then it goes on to say we recognize that GPT-4o's audio modalities present a variety of novel risks. Today, we are publicly releasing, and again, this is in May, publicly releasing text and image inputs and text outputs. So when they announced GPT-4o in May, so the model was done, they only actually made available text and image inputs and outputs. So the audio and the vision capabilities were not released in May, even though they were obviously done. Over the upcoming weeks and months, we'll be working on technical infrastructure, usability via post training, and safety necessary to release the other modalities. For example, at launch, audio outputs will be limited to a selection of preset voices, which is exactly what you just outlined, Mike, and will abide by our existing safety policies. We will share further details addressing the full range of modalities in a forthcoming system card. The capabilities will be rolled out iteratively with extended red teaming. So here's what I can't shake, Mike. When we think about what is GPT-5, and it's like everybody just keeps waiting for it. The more I think about this, the more I think we're already seeing it.
Mm.
So if you piece together everything that OpenAI has released or talked about over the last 6 months in particular, we have video with Sora. We have voice, which we're now experiencing. The image generation, Dolly's kind of a joke when you compare it to Midjourney right now, but my guess is it won't be when they release the next version of Dolly. We have Project Strawberry. We have like whatever that is, math, reasoning, whatever it is, the ability to solve more complex problems, go through reasoning, assistant decisioning. We have search, which was we talked about on last week's episode. We have vision, which they haven't talked more about yet, but the ability for your device to see and understand the world around it. They have already previewed basically all the modalities that are talked about in the 4.0 announcement in May is individual pieces. But when you put those pieces together, and this would fit with the iterative deployment that Sam Altman has talked about, I think that we already have a pretty clear picture of what GPT-5 is going to be. And I think 4.0 is literally just a naming convention until all the pieces are in place. And then once we go back, so let's go back one more time and read that opening. GPT 4.0 is a step towards much more natural human computer interaction. It accepts as any input or as input any combination of text, audio, image, and video, and generates any combination of text, audio, and image outputs. Take that, give it advanced reasoning capabilities, give it the ability to see and understand the world around it, and I think you have GPT-5.
Mm.
And so that's the thing that I can't shake is like the voice on its own is just mind blowing. I mean, truly, like if you haven't seen these, and I don't say that lightly, like I don't usually use hyperbole when I'm explaining these technologies. Like it really is hard to comprehend the impact a technology like this could have on business, on marketing, on our personal lives. And so when you look at what OpenAI is doing and you actually compare it over to what Google is doing, I think it becomes quite clear that Google and OpenAI are in a realm all their own right now. So
Mm.
yes, Anthropic matters, and yeah, 3.5 Sonnet's awesome, but last I checked, like Claude's still not connected to the internet. It doesn't do images. I haven't heard anything about vision stuff with them. So they're doing reasoning, they're doing language models really well, but it doesn't seem like they're playing in the same ballpark. And everything we're seeing from Google and everything we're seeing from OpenAI seems like they're differentiating themselves in this pursuit of whatever this smarter form is going to be. And then the last note I had is Also this week, and we'll have a more of a link to this in the newsletter, but Apple Intelligence started rolling out to select users, developers, I think, have started getting access to that. And so people are starting to now experiment with the new Siri that is being talked about. So we touched on this, let's see, episode 102 on June 12th. We talked about Apple Intelligence and the new operating system that's going to come out in October. Isn't that last week we said it got delayed till October?
Yeah.
And so the thing I like when I see this OpenAI voice capability, the thing I immediately think about is that Siri is just going to be obsoleted. Like it doesn't appear like if you fast forward a month or two from now and all of us can have access to this OpenAI voice capability, why would I ever open Siri again?
You're
Like if
right.
I can just go like it just seems like it's so far ahead. And so I was asking myself this question as I was prepping for today's podcast, like what would I use Siri for? Like if it really does this stuff. And so I went back and just took a look at how Apple was describing Siri. Because if you remember, Apple's doing a deal with OpenAI to integrate ChatGPT, but that didn't sound like they were integrating the voice technology. And so I think the play Apple's going to have to make here is accept that someone probably built the better voice assistant, the thing they always envisioned building. I think OpenAI just is going to win at that.
Hmm.
And the Apple Intelligence component is Siri is your trusted assistant that works within your device that it keeps everything completely private and has access to all of your apps. And it becomes more of like an on-device AI agent that enables you to work with all of your applications. So if you go to the Apple Intelligence page, it literally says like Siri has all new design that's even more deeply integrated into the system experience. It has expansive product knowledge, so it knows all about your phone and everything within it. It has a richer understanding and enhanced voice communicating ability, but it talks about on screen awareness. So Siri is going to know everything you're doing on your screen. OpenAI won't have that. It'll know everything you've communicated, the personal context. OpenAI won't have that. It'll seamlessly take action across apps. OpenAI won't have that.
Hmm.
And so that's what I start to wonder is like, can Apple successfully delineate this on-device AI agent that knows you and everything within it, and that's how you're going to use that. And then there's a separate voice thing that doesn't have access to all your apps and doesn't know what you're doing on your thing on your devices. So it's gonna be fascinating once we get both of these by October. So I assume Apple Intelligence Siri will be readily available to everyone with an iPhone 15 Pro and above, and I assume voice from OpenAI will have rolled out and be done with all the red teaming by October. And so this fall, it's just going to be a different world where voice becomes maybe like heads toward a true user interface. Like we've never really had that. So we had computers with keyboard and mouse, we had touch with different devices, and now we're moving into a generation where voice truly becomes an interface, and that's going to be wild.
Yeah, and voice, it strikes me more than any of the other interfaces really is natural and anthropomorphizes almost the models we're
Yeah.
interacting with.
Yeah, I mean, I it's so weird, like, AI rights activists, like, I think you're gonna see that become
Mm,
a thing. I've thought about this recently, the situational awareness stuff when I was listening to Leopold in interviews, I thought about this idea of AI rights activists. I'm not gonna lie, like, when I was watching, like, Ethan Mollick had a demo, I think Ali Miller, I watched a demo of her with OpenAI's voice where they interrupt it kinda rudely while it's talking.
mhm.
I get the same feeling in my stomach I do when someone does that to another human. And,
Yeah.
like and I know it's an AI, but I have feeling toward that. Like, I have an emotion that's triggered in me when someone talks rudely to someone, and it happens when I see people doing it to these, and I get that same feeling about, like, when someone mistreats an animal. Like,
Mm.
I know that may sound weird, and I don't know if I'm, like, alone on this, but it's gonna be a problem. Like, it's very bizarre how you do, as you're saying, like, you start to just, like, assign human-like qualities to these things, even though we know it's not there.
So, in another big topic this week, we are seeing the possibility that the kind of global war over chips, over AI infrastructure, may be evolving into a cloud war, according to kind of a recent take by Chris Miller, who is the author of an important book called Chip War, which is about the geopolitical rivalry to control AI chips and infrastructure. So basically, the idea is that as AI systems become increasingly important to the global economy, the data centers, the chips that train these systems are starting to be viewed as strategic resources by governments all over the world. And so, what Miller does in this article is he kind of draws parallels between the systems we have today and the situation that we experienced during the Cold War era when supercomputers were tightly controlled due to their dual use nature for both civilian and military applications. So, like for instance, today's AI systems have similar dual use potential. I mean, they do everything from optimize food delivery apps, but also analyze satellite imagery and direct drone strikes. So, as a result, of this kind of strange dynamic, like many countries are now seeking to establish their own AI infrastructure through data centers and infrastructure that's built on their soil that they control. So, for instance, countries like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, they're among those that are investing very heavily in data center capacity and AI development. Now, in this article, they kind of talk about US cloud companies see tons of lucrative opportunities in this trend. And the companies that sell all these cloud type of services argue that if they don't take contracts from these foreign governments for quote sovereign AI infrastructure, another superpower like China will. So the US government also views this as a way to promote American technology and limit Chinese influence. So this, of course, just raises all sorts of kind of concerns and compromises that a lot of security experts in the US are concerned about. Things like Microsoft has a partnership with the United Arab Emirates owned G42, which has historic ties to Chinese companies like Huawei. And basically, where Miller gets to is that the conclusion that the tech competition that began way back when with semiconductors is now expanding into new layers of the computing stack with chips, clouds, data centers becoming increasingly important, increasingly interlinked in this global race for AI dominance. So, Paul, let's first talk about maybe the big picture here. This touches on a ton of points that, Leopold Aschenbrenner touched on in situational awareness and a few of the other topics we've covered recently. Like, why does this matter globally to the direction and speed of AI innovation?
From a simple perspective, I think for listeners, for your own career, for the business, the industry you're in, um, what this indicates is that the big tech companies and leading governments are preparing for an intelligence explosion. Like that, whether economists are telling us this or not, whether the latest research report is telling us this or not, whether the stock market's movements are telling us this or not, when you look out over a 3 to 10 year horizon, everyone is preparing for a world where intelligence is omnipresent. And what I mean by that is right now, what we've had, and we've talked about this before, is all of this demand for NVIDIA's chips to build these data centers, to build what Microsoft and Google and OpenAI and Anthropic are all trying to do. For the most part, it has been to train these very large models. And now we're trying to find, the applications for those models and trying to infuse them into businesses and find these generative AI use cases. But generally speaking, the intelligence hasn't diffused throughout society yet. Like Apple Intelligence is coming this fall. The voice from OpenAI is starting to come out this fall. Like we have been using the data and the computing power to build the models. In the future, the need is going to flip. The majority of the use of these data centers and the chips that power the AI and the energy that makes it all possible is going to be used for inference. Now, we've talked about this idea before, but you have the training of the models, and then you have the inference that occurs when you and I use the models. And so what's happening is as intelligence is starting to be built into everything we use, into your phone, your glasses, your computers, your household appliances, your cars, that's going to be the inference compute that's needed. And so what we're seeing is, as he's saying, it's going to evolve to the point where, like, who can serve the amount of energy and data and computing power needed to provide all that inference.
Mm,
And so that's where this is all going. And we talked on episode 83 back in February 2024 about Sam. The rumor at that time was he was trying to raise $7 trillion, and he was talking with UAE leaders, and he was thinking about putting data centers in other countries. That's all kind of related to this stuff. There was a ton in the earnings calls that just this week about capex spend and infrastructure and how much was being put into data centers. So this is like a huge ongoing topic. But phones and computers where we're going to use AI and have access to intelligent assistants is one thing. The other thing we talked about back on episode 87 is, and this is where it gets weird, is humanoid robots. Um, but just this morning, Figure, which is one of the key players in that market. So Figure, if you'll recall, has a deal with OpenAI where they're embodying these large language models into the robot.
mm,
And so the robot, all those 4.0 capabilities we just talked about, imagine a 6 foot tall humanoid robot that can talk to you. So now you're not just talking to your phone in a little, cute little bubble that's going. You're looking at a humanoid robot that can talk to you that way. So Brett Haddock, the founder of Figure, he tweeted this morning, or was it last night? Only recently has time opened a window of opportunity to scale billions of intelligent humanoid robots. This was not feasible 5 years ago. We are fortunate to be in 2024, the first year in history when this is possible. Life is about to turn into a sci fi film. And then they announced that they are launching Figure 2, which is the new humanoid robot, on August 6th. So next
mm.
week, we will get a preview of this thing. Um, he then went on and tweeted, no doubt the biggest company in our lifetime will be within humanoid robotics. A humanoid robot company will exceed 1 trillion of value purely from operating in commercial factories. So doing things like lifting stuff that humans can't, but they build them to be humanoid because the world is designed for humans. And so these things need 5 fingers and toes and all these things because they have to function like we do. A robot in the home will bring about a $20 trillion or greater company. And Figure Robot is working on both, as is Elon Musk with their Optimus at Tesla, as are other people. So the thing we have to keep in mind is we're looking at the near term future as business leaders, as practitioners, as knowledge workers. We're just trying to figure out how to use ChatGPT and like find the 3 use cases. But you have to understand that governments and tech leaders are looking way beyond that. But when I say way beyond, I'm talking like 3, 5 years beyond,
Right, right.
where they're seeing an explosion of intelligence that we are not currently set up infrastructure wise to support, but they envision intelligence being absolutely everywhere. And that's the part that I lose sleep over. It's just like, what happens when this all, comes to be? Or even again, like I always say, even if it's just like 30% of this vision, like
Right,
even if we don't
right.
get to billions of
Right.
humanoid robots, but 5, 7, 10 years from now, we got 250 million humanoid robots walking around. Like, what is that world like?
Yeah, that's so interesting to think of, and I think that's a really kind of sneakily important point is that there's tons of hype in this space. There's obviously tons of wild claims and like fantastical thinking about what can and will happen in the future. But if you look at all the signals you'd use to evaluate if someone is legit or not in any other business decision, like look where the money's going, look where the effort is going, and look at what people are actually doing in addition to what they're saying. And that seems to indicate that you're absolutely spot on. And again, if it's 20, 30% of what we're talking about here, that alone is sci-fi.
Yeah. And again, I think you can ground back into like the GPT 4.0 conversation of
Mm,
everything they put in that article in May, they already have. Like, they're not publishing that stuff and previewing it if they don't already have it and it's in red teaming, or if they don't know technologically it's achievable by the end of the year. So that wasn't like some 3 to 5 year vision thing. That was, this is the model we have built and are in the
Mm,
process of red teaming. And and then you fast forward a year or 2 from now, like we talked about, I think on the last episode, this idea of just think 12 to 18 months out, like you're gonna have the next version, and what is that gonna be able to do? And that's where I think the best businesses, the companies that truly differentiate themselves in the next 5 to 10 years, the leaders who become so valuable, the practitioners who become extremely valuable in their careers, they're gonna look 12 to 18 months out. They're gonna look at the signals, as you were saying, like, look at the indicators of where this is going
mm.
and contingency plan for them being right. Like, most businesses are gonna plan based on what is true today. If you're the one that says, "Okay, we'll plan on what is true today, but I'm pretty confident that the other assumptions may be true, so let's build a contingency plan that they're right, and we do have this intelligence explosion, and let's be ready to be there before our competitors and before our peers." And I think that's the opportunity in front of people right now.
All right. So, our third big topic this week is kind of about an interesting week that Microsoft is having. So, first, they released their quarterly earnings. These revealed kind of mixed results that actually led to a drop in the company's stock price. They actually beat their overall revenue and earnings per share expectations, but they fell a little short on cloud revenue, which came in about zero point 0.2 billion lower than expected. However, despite that, their overall revenue grew by 21% year over year. Interestingly, and this is kind of the important point here, they noted that AI services contributed 8 percentage points of growth to Azure and other cloud services revenue, which overall saw a 29% increase. Now, as part of these earnings announcements, Jameen Ball, who is a partner at Altimeter, released some really interesting stats on kind of where Microsoft is at today when we think about where the rubber is really meeting the road in terms of AI generating revenue and usage. So he had tweeted out or posted on X rather that Azure AI services, which is what was responsible for that 8 percentage point bump in the earnings, has a $5 billion run rate, which is up 900% year over year. It has 60,000 customers, up 60% year over year. GitHub is at a $2 billion run rate. That's up from a billion just a couple years ago. GitHub Copilot, which is the company's AI coding assistant, has 300 million in ARR. And also, Jameen Ball said that the daily users of Office Copilot have doubled quarter over quarter, and Office Copilot customers grew 60% year over year. Now, to kind of tie all this together, these developments come just as Microsoft researchers have also released their second report on AI and productivity, which is called Generative AI in Real World Workplaces. What this report does is it synthesizes a bunch of findings from a number of recent Microsoft studies on how these tools are having an impact in the real world, both generative AI as a whole and Microsoft Copilot specifically. So here's a few highlights. And Paul, I know you had quite a few thoughts on some
Mhm.
of the other stuff we're seeing in this report as well. But some of the highlights include one of the studies was a large scale randomized controlled trial across 60 plus organizations. It found that Copilot users read 11% fewer emails, spent 4% less time on emails, and edited 10% more documents using the tool. In another survey, interestingly, Microsoft found that 78% of knowledge workers out of 31,000 surveyed said they used at least some AI tools not provided by their organization. And another survey on Copilot usage showed that the perceived benefits from Copilot increased with longer usage duration. So, Paul, to kind of like pull all these threads together, it seems like AI is actually contributing real business value to someone like Microsoft. The adoption appears to be increasing according to the studies. Like, what jumped out at you about what they were finding in terms of how people were using either Copilot or generative AI?
So I want to like laser in on the one where they studied 60 organizations and 6,000 individuals across industries. So you talked about what were pretty underwhelming results, like people with Copilot within this control group. read 11% fewer individual emails and
Yeah.
spent 4% less time interacting with them. It's like, okay, like, I don't know, like, is email really the interesting use case here? Like, it was focusing obviously on products, and capabilities that, 365 enables. So they looked at, like, meeting time and emails and stuff like that. Um, but, like, the one they talked about was summarizing emails. So they hypothesized that people were spending less time on emails because maybe they were using the summarize feature. I would
Mm.
think they'd be able to monitor that, but, um, I always, like, kinda laugh at the summarize feature. Again, maybe it's just me, but who uses that? Like, it's the first thing everybody's felt like Zoom has a summarize this thread. It's like 5 there's like a total of 50 words in the thread. I don't need you to summarize it for me. And, like, how long are your email threads that you need the summarize email button? Like, just read the last email in the thread usually. So I don't know, like, I feel like they were assessing this against features that I don't find that interesting. And maybe this goes back to the Chevron conversation where we were saying, like, they had 20,000 Copilot licenses, they weren't sure of the ROI. Well,
Right.
if the features, the AI capabilities you're using are summarizing emails and meetings and, like, that's it, and you're not individualizing use cases to people and, like, providing training and education of how to use them, then okay, yeah, I guess maybe Copilot is pretty useless. I don't know. Like, so I was a little bit sort of surprised at how they conducted the study. Like, if you're Microsoft and you want to show the value of Copilot, giving it to 6,000 people across 60 organizations and waiting to see if they sent fewer emails or
Mm.
if they spent less time in meetings, if that's your measurement of whether or not they got value from Copilot, then I think you got a bigger problem on your hands as Microsoft. So I see the problem, and I kind of highlighted this in our last conversation. 6,000 people got Copilot with I read the doc and I scanned it to make sure I didn't miss something. I keyword searches for training, education, and onboarding. They don't appear in the document
Mhm.
related to any of this. So it doesn't seem like they taught anyone how to use Copilot for one. They didn't use any imagination in the use cases for it. They just literally sat back and waited to see if they sent fewer emails. So they said, what about
Right.
teaching people like a marketer, like how do you use Copilot to do marketing more efficiently? So there's just like these homogenous applications. Like we're just going to assess the use and value of Copilot based on emails, meetings, and documents. Okay, well, what about I'm a marketer, I'm a salesperson, I'm a customer service rep. Give me 5 use cases, teach me how to use Copilot to do those 5 use cases, benchmark my performance before and after. Like, why do we have to do these like blind studies and just see how many people figure out how to use Copilot? So I don't know. Like I was kind of excited to read this, and then I got into it. And I was like, oh, like this this is what they spent months doing. Like this seems like a totally backwards way to do this. So my takeaway here is, as we've said before, like research reports can be really valuable. Don't rely on these to know whether or not Copilot is going to create value for you and your company, or ChatGPT, or Google Gemini, or whatever it is. Do your own work, individualize, personalize the use cases, train people on the platform, create benchmarks, run 90-day studies to look at the improvement. Like, this is not adoption done the right way for generative AI, is basically what I'm saying. And I would
Mm.
expect Microsoft would have had the foresight to do this study differently, because it's their product they're trying to show the value for. And yet they just, I don't know, it didn't do it. Like, I'm sorry, a 10% increase in a reduction in time spent on emails with some hypotheses as to why that would be occurring, such as maybe they're using the summarize function. Like,
Mm.
I'm not buying 10,000 licenses for Copilot based on that data. I don't know.
Yeah,
What did you think? Like,
yeah. Well,
I don't know, I was being harsh or what?
it did make me feel a little crazy because I was like, "Okay, this is, like, mildly interesting." I'm glad we're starting to ask some questions around real world applications versus some of the research they previously kinda just done in a lab or in a really
Right.
isolated use case, so I appreciated that, but I was like, we're sitting there day in, day out talking to people, running workshops, doing speaking engagements where it's like, even like on a few ounces of creativity is like, look what you can do with document analysis. Look what you can do when you start using this for ideation or as a strategy assistant. And I'm not saying like Copilot can do every single possible thing we can envision using generative AI tools for. But even I just think of like the slides we show all the time in Intro to AI or my applied AI talks or your strategic leader talks. Like these are way more creative
Yeah.
than any of the things in these studies. And I'm like, I don't think they're even rocket science either. So I'm curious as to like where the disconnect came from. Like, did Microsoft want to play it safe? Did they just not think of I
I
can't
don't
believe
know.
they didn't think of these things, I
I know,
guess
and I
is
think
where
my
I'm getting
biggest
to.
problem was, like, when you read the introduction, it literally says, "We believe this research is the largest controlled study of productivity impacts in real-world generative AI deployments to date." Okay, if you're gonna make that claim, this better be good. This better not be you think people are using the summarize feature in emails to save time. So, again,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
not to kill Microsoft for this,
Sure,
but
sure.
this is not what it was supposed to be. Like, this could have been way, way better if they took people like the BC I always go back to, like, that BCG one with the consultants. They took
Mhm.
them even that one, they didn't train them how to use GPT-4.
Right.
They just gave it to them.
Right.
So, I think the opportunity is if we rephrase this, we believe that this research is the largest controlled study of productivity impacts in real-world generative AI deployments today. Someone has the opportunity to do the largest one that actually customized use cases, train people how to use the platform, and benchmark before and after. Now I'm reading. Like, so if
And
someone
I
does that study or knows of that study, please let Mike and I know.
Yeah, for sure. And I again, you're right. Like, I'm not trying to bag on their really great work here, or like, I'm sure it's took a lot of effort, but it feels like they might have, and I understand why, focused on we want to do the largest controlled study and didn't control for doing an interesting one, you know?
Yes.
So it's like, I'd rather have a study where it's like, hey, we found 50 people and that have used AI to 10x their output. And I'd be like, okay,
Awesome.
I'll
How'd
read
they
that. I
do it?
mean, just I realize it's not controlled across all the groups, but
Right.
that's like way more interesting to me.
Yeah.
Again, maybe it's just me. I don't
I'm with you. Well,
know.
maybe we need to run that study. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Then maybe that's next state of the industry
Yeah.
report. All right, let's dive into some rapid fire this week. So first up, also we saw some quarterly earnings come out from Meta, which saw its shares rally a bit after reporting some strong second quarter earnings. And it also kind of came concurrently while CEO Mark Zuckerberg is kind of reassuring his investors about the company's significant investments in AI. So at the time, Meta's shares jumped more than 7.5% in pre market trading following that earnings report because their net income for second quarter climbed 73% to 13.47 billion, which exceeded expectations. Now, this marked a turnaround from the reaction to Meta's previous earnings report in April, when Zuckerberg's announcement of slower growth and increased AI spending sparked a bit of a sell off. Now, what's really interesting here is that Meta has increased the lower end of its CapEx range to account for AI projects. So we talked about that the previous week, that these companies are making massive CapEx expenditures on AI. And Zuckerberg actually emphasized these investments are beginning to pay off. Not to mention another point we mentioned, emphasized when we talked about Llama last week. He stated that the costs are outweighed by the company's strong performance in its core advertising business. So, Paul, this really hits on this point that Meta has a bit of a unique advantage in the AI arms race because they don't have to make money selling AI models, which is kind of why they're going this open source route. And it sounds like they also have room to subsidize AI because they have a whole other core business that does really, really well. Like, is that how you view earnings like this?
Yeah, and there was excerpts from it, like different quotes I saw from Zuckerberg where they basically said that it's like, listen, I don't know, it was like 55 billion or something like that they're spending
Yeah.
on research and development and stuff, and which I think is more than anybody else at this point. And he's pretty nonchalant about it. It's like, yeah, like we're, we'll figure out how to make money down the road. Like we're not too worried about it, and we're going to keep doing what we got to do. We're going to keep investing. Like I think he said something like the risk of underinvesting is
Yeah.
far greater than the risk of overinvesting, and so we're going to pour money into this space. Um, we'll put in the show notes. I haven't had a chance to watch this video yet, but it's on my list to watch this weekend. Um, Jensen and Zuckerberg, so Jensen, the CEO of NVIDIA, and Zuckerberg did an interview together, kind of like a mutual fireside chat, if you will. And it got 1.9 million views. It was just posted 3 days ago. So AI and the next computing platform was their topic. So we'll put the link in the show notes. It's on YouTube. It's readily available. NVIDIA published it on their YouTube channel. So that's probably going to be a fascinating listen. And if we hear anything interesting in it, we'll pull out some excerpts for next week's show.
So, next up, Perplexity, which we talk about more and more these days, the AI powered search engine, is launching a new publishers program to share ad revenue with publishing partners. And this kind of comes as a response to all this controversy surrounding the company's use of content from various publications. They're being kind of tagged for showing a bunch of content that feels like it's a bit plagiarized or used without proper or clear attribution in their results. So, the first batch of partners in this program includes some prominent names like Time Magazine, Fortune, Entrepreneur, and Automatic, which is the company behind WordPress.com. And as part of this deal, publishers are going to receive a share of ad revenue when their content is featured in Perplexity's responses to user queries. Now, the revenue share is structured as a multi-year agreement with, quote, double-digit percentage that is consistent across all publishers, according to The Verge. So, Paul, we've talked time and time again about how AI companies are kind of starting to pursue these licensing deals with content publishers because they're trying to avoid issues with being sued for training on copyrighted material. This is like a slightly different twist on that. I mean, are ad revenue sharing programs like this a viable way forward for Perplexity given its current controversies and woes?
I mean, it's probably helpful from a legal perspective. I mean, I think they're still going to get sued by people, but yeah, I mean, this is the deal publishers have to make. It's either we're going to sue you and try and get the money, or we're just going to accept that this is the future and we're going to play the game. And it's not just the training data; it's the inference too. It's when the question is asked, do they have access to real time data from these publishers to pull it? I didn't read the full article, so I don't know if they talked about, like, what about brands? Like, you're training and using our data in real time too. Like, can we be part of the publisher program, or do you have to be a big media company who can sue them before you're allowed to be in the publisher program? The other question I would have is, what does this do to the quality of Perplexity's results or outputs? Like, will partners get preference in citations? Will I know it's a partner that I'm getting the citation for and maybe not actually the best quality source? Like with
Mhm.
Google, at least I know what the sponsored links are. Is the citation number gonna be blue if it's a sponsored citation? Like what I don't know how the model exactly is gonna play out. So I think it's interesting. It's probably something they have to try to alleviate some of the legal pressures around their model.
Right.
Whether or not it works long term, I don't know. And calling it like ad revenue is interesting since they don't have ads. So that's why I'm wondering, like, are they paid citations then, or it's just if their model happens to organically surface a citation to a company they have a deal with, then they'll give them money, and then we're just going to trust Perplexity to actually like report properly on that. I don't know. I obviously have way more questions about this model than I have answers, but I do think we'll see more experiments like this run that are probably gonna keep evolving over time. But I do wonder about the brand side of this. I mean,
Right.
everybody's listening to this probably works for a brand or owns a company, and we all spend money publishing content like this podcast, and if our transcripts start showing up as answers to questions and,
Right.
they're citing us, like, our do we get money? Like, can we join this program? I don't know. I'm not sure how it's gonna play out.
All right. So we have a quick update on a piece of US legislation at the state level, which several months ago we had mentioned was kind of worth keeping an eye on. This law is in California and it is called the Safe and Secure Innovation for Frontier Artificial Intelligence Models Act. It
Is that
is
what that
called
stands for? I never saw the full name. That's
the
SB?
it says it's a mouthful. It is I don't know if that's what SB stands for. That's probably like I don't know, like Senate bill or state
Okay,
bill
I
or
would say, where's
something.
the B in that?
But yeah, that would be my guess.
Okay.
But it is for short SB 1047, which is how a lot of people are referencing it online. Basically, this is a law designed to regulate large AI models and prevent potential catastrophic harm from those. And so it has just passed the California Senate and is expected to face a final vote in the state assembly in August. Now, The reason we're talking about this is that because it's in California, it's drawing a ton of attention from Silicon Valley in the tech world because there's a lot of controversy around SB 1047 because it requires quite a few um, mandates around how to regulate the safety of these models. So, companies developing models of a certain size have to implement testing procedures and also systems to prevent and respond to safety incidents. These are things like the bill focusing on future AI systems that might autonomously engage in harmful behavior. And so it mandates that companies training large models have the capability to promptly shut down their systems. This was termed a few months ago a quote kill switch by some people analyzing it. Now, there are some supporters of this bill, including prominent AI researchers Jeffrey Hinton and Joshua Bengio. They are pro the bill because they argue it mitigates risks that could be down the line posed by advanced AI systems. But there is a lot of talk in Silicon Valley and among AI companies of criticism, just like really categorizing the bill as more of what we might call the quote AI doomer argument, assuming that AI systems will be largely autonomous and capable of harm at a wide scale. Now, Paul, there's a lot of pushback from AI leaders on this. One of the top kind of critics of it has been Andrew Ng, who's a huge voice in AI. And he's basically arguing that SB 1047 stifles innovation. It goes way overboard, trying to hold AI companies liable if someone uses their models for harm. So it really does seem like some of the top voices in AI are coming out and worrying that this bill could be overreach. Like, what do we need to keep an eye on here?
Yeah, interesting timing. The White House released a report on July 30th. So as we're grappling with this, bill that's moving so quickly in California, and the headline of the AP story was White House says no need to restrict open source AI, at least for
Right.
now. And so that was in reference to a Department of Commerce, National Telecommunications and Information Administration. Talk about another mouthful. Um, they issued policy recommendations embracing openness in AI while calling for active monitoring of risks in powerful AI models. The Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Communications and Information, Alan Davidson, said the openness of the largest and most powerful AI systems will affect competition, innovation, and risks in these revolutionary tools. The report recognizes the importance of open AI systems and calls for more active monitoring of risks from the wide availability of model weights for the largest AI models. Government has a key role to play in supporting AI development while building capacity to understand and address new risks. Open weight models allow developers to build upon and adapt previous work, broadening AI tools availability to small companies, researchers, nonprofits, and individuals. This would seem to counter the SB 1047 bill. I would think it was almost
Right.
like the government, without being able to step in, sort of making it clear that they don't want to stifle innovation at this point, that they don't think we're at a point where risk is so severe that we should halt things. So yeah, I mean, it's continually interesting to me how this will play out, especially given that this is in the state where most of AI innovation is happening. Like
Right.
Silicon Valley is the epicenter of AI in the world right
Right.
now. So the fact that that is where this is occurring is just so interesting. So yeah, I mean, definitely worth keeping an eye on. The federal government's obviously got a voice in all of this. It's interesting to see how it plays out.
So, next up, an AI company that we mention often on the podcast, Writer, who is a value partner of Marketing AI Institute, they have actually launched two specialized large language models designed specifically for the healthcare and financial services industries. So, these new models are called Palmyra Med 70B and Palmyra Fin 70B, Med for medical, Fin for finance. And they're now available as open source offerings on major AI platforms. The company says that these specialized models outperform larger generalized AI models like GPT-4 in domain specific tasks. So, for instance, the healthcare model Palmyra Med 70B has achieved an average accuracy of 85.9% across all medical benchmarks in zero shot attempts, which surpassed some competitors. The company claims that the Palmyra Fin 70B model is the first AI model that is capable of passing the CFA Level 3 exam, which is considered one of the most challenging tests in investment management. So, Paul, I want to kind of dial in on this idea of AI being applied to specific domains of knowledge work. Like right now, we have broadly capable general models. Like, what happens when people start trying to make models that are really good at specific industry roles or tasks?
Uh, I mean, I think we're going to see a lot more of this. I will say, like, while we know Writer and have they've worked with them for years, I've been aware of them and their product and their leadership. I have no firsthand knowledge of how these models were trained, and so if I objectively look at this, the thing I always wonder is like, how are you training competitive models without $1 billion in funding? That's like always my first question. Is like, are you building on top of someone else's open source and then like fine tuning it for a minute? Like, I don't know how these are done. I think that they're doing their own. I just don't know how. When we think about vertical solutions, and so here's med and finance, but you could do this in any industry you want. Um, what is going to make these models unique is, to my understanding, two key components: proprietary data to train on, high
Mm,
quality proprietary data to train on that's specific to that domain. So, for example, doing deals with healthcare organizations where you get access to proprietary data that you can use that isn't publicly available to these frontier models. Um, and then reinforcement learning through human feedback. Having medical professionals who know the field work to train these models post training. So you do the run and then you have your core model, and then you have, say, 10 doctors, and those doctors work with the model and look at the outputs. And then they say, this output is better than this output. And
mhm,
they follow guidelines of like what the output should be. And then they use their domain expertise to train them after the initial training run. And so data plus reinforcement learning through human feedback with experts in that domain could give you a model that's better than the frontier model in theory at doing a specific industry. And so if that stays true, if GPT-5, GPT-6 doesn't just like eliminate the need for these vertical models, that it's just better at everything than any fine-tuned model, then those are the things you would look for. And again, I think if you're doing a custom model in your own company, like you're thinking about this for customer service or things like that, then you may take like a Llama 3.1 model, an open source model, and then use your own proprietary data and hire experts or take your internal experts and do reinforcement learning through human feedback, RLHF, to make that model specific to your company or your industry. And so that's what we're seeing here. I assume, again, I don't know how they did this, but I can't imagine any way they would do this without proprietary data and
right.
RLHF. Um, and I think we may see more of these kinds of, I know we talk to a lot of companies. This is what they ask: how do we train our own model? Like
Mhm.
we don't want to use OpenAI's. We want to build our own and own it. And we have Yash God, I think, from Ringer Sciences, is doing a talk on custom models with your own data at MAICON, if I remember correctly, seeing that title today.
So, next up, with very little formal fanfare, Google has made an experimental version of Gemini 1.5 Pro available for early testing and feedback in Google AI Studio and through the Gemini API. And it's making some waves for pretty great performance. So, this experimental version of the model is called Gemini 1.5 Pro Experimental 0801. And it has now actually claimed the top spot on lmsys.org's chatbot arena leaderboard. It surpasses currently GPT 4.0 and Claude 3.5. Now, that leaderboard changes quite a bit, so that could change. But it also, for the time being, hit number one on the lmsys.org Vision leaderboard. And this is the first time a Google Gemini model has actually topped this leaderboard. So, Paul, I thought like this observation from Ethan Mollick really kind of encapsulated this story. He had posted, companies are just releasing next level models without telling anyone about it. just quiet, somewhat baffling rollouts. Gemini 1.5 Pro Experimental 0801 really rolls off the tongue there, is at the top of the major AI leaderboard. What's different about it? Who knows? He says. Like, what's going on with this behavior from major companies? This feels like something that you would not expect of someone like Google.
I think what's going on is they're so focused on, and this is just a theory, and honestly, I hadn't even thought about that. You just asked this question. I think what's going on is they are building the next version of the frontier model, and they have some element of it that they can just go ahead and put out safely into the world.
Mm.
And they know if they put it on, how do you say that? LY.
As
Speaking of needing a
lmsys.org
rebrand,
is, yeah,
like
no kidding. I honestly, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say it. I'm just going
I
based
just
on the
see it all
letter.
the
It's
time.
an acronym. So,
So they know they have a captive place where there are testers who have fun doing this. It's like a game to them, go in and play with the latest models so they can get user feedback. I don't think it's intended as a release for you and I and for businesses. Like we're just, because of the popularity of this stuff and how fast it's changing, we're kind of just exposed to the inside of how this all happens,
mm,
like where people are giving access to early test of models to provide feedback and stuff so they can build that feedback into the real thing, which is when they will actually make a big announcement from Sundar, not from
right.
whoever on the Google team that tweeted it. So I think that's what's happening is they're all focused on the big thing, and in the process, they release a bunch of little things that, yeah, they could make an announcement about it, they could tell you it's different, but they don't really care. That it's just, "Here, have fun with this." Like, "Oh, okay, great. It's now number 1." So to us, it's like, "Holy cow," like, Google just released a model that's now number 1 on this leaderboard ahead of GPT-4. What does that mean? Does that mean it's like is now the most powerful model in the world? And Google just probably sits there laughing, like, whatever," like, and because they've probably already got Gemini 2
Right.
Extreme, whatever they're gonna call the next one, it's probably already been in testing for 3 months at Google, and, like, they're just laughing at us because we think 1.5 is fun, and they just think it's some cute little thing. That's like Sam's talked about that before, how they would just release things that they didn't think were gonna be a big deal because they'd been using it already, and then people were, like, freaking out about it. So, I think that's what's happening. I think we're just getting an inside look at them releasing some stuff to experiment with it and see how people react to it and do some testing with it. And then 2 months from now, they'll drop the real thing on everybody with, an announcements from Demis and Sundar, a joint blog post from Demis and Sundar. Like, I don't know. I assume that's what's happening.
Yeah, and that's exactly kind of why I wanted to quickly mention this topic and talk about that Moloch post really
Yeah.
quick, is because, like, I could very well see, like, plenty of really savvy business leaders that we know and talk to. You see the headline, like, "Oh, Google, like, secretly releases new model that tops the leaderboard," and you're like, "Oh, no, like, did we make the wrong move?" Like,
We just
if you
built
don't
on top of
right,
Llama.
right, yeah. So if you're not really following this in certain ways, it's really easy to get caught up and be like, you cannot sit here and wait for the right model to come out, and you need to
Correct.
kind of dive a little deeper into the headlines, I would say.
Well, it's the whole idea last week I said of like, are we just in the stage now where there's just parallel innovation? Like,
Yeah,
just everybody's
right.
like, every other week, somebody's been testing a secretive model, and all of a sudden they gave it a name, and oh my, Anthropic Claude 3.82 is now like the. I just think people, it's fun, like it's cool to like see what's happening, but it doesn't change your life, like as a business person, as a marketer, or as like whatever you do, like it's just interesting to know, but it's
Mhm.
probably more of a prelude to something big is probably coming. And whether or not the big thing that's coming is a leap forward or a parallel innovation is really what we're trying to keep the pulse of.
All right, our last topic for this week is that Microsoft has officially added OpenAI to its list of competitors in its latest annual report. So this change comes shortly after OpenAI announced a prototype of a search engine called Search GPT, which we talked about last week. And the tech giant is now calling OpenAI a competitor in AI offerings and in search and news advertising. Now, obviously, this is a little Notable given that Microsoft has a big investment in OpenAI. It's reportedly around $13 billion, and they've got ongoing partnerships together. Now, despite this new stance, an OpenAI spokesperson said that nothing about the relationship between the two companies has changed. But I guess I got to ask, Paul, how likely is it that we actually see Microsoft and OpenAI fall out of favor with each other? Like, does this actually threaten at all, like the dynamic of Microsoft having access to OpenAI's technology and models?
I mean, unless Microsoft's planning on unloading their whatever percentage they own, I think it was 49% of
Yeah.
OpenAI and the rights to the first 100 million in profits. Like, I don't see a breakup happening, and there's no way Microsoft would be allowed from federal regulators to acquire OpenAI, which would seem like a natural thing if they wouldn't get caught up in you know investigations into illegal practices or
Mm.
unfair competitive practices if they were to acquire them. So I don't really see a way forward other than they're gonna just keep working together. But man, is that awkward. Like, I was trying to play
Yeah.
that out in my mind as you were talking of like any industry other than technology where a scenario like this would play out where someone who's considering you a major competitor who you're building products to compete with owns 49% of your company but can't buy you. Where
Right.
how would that be normal? Like, you're just sitting in strategy meetings together, like showing them the next model because they have the rights to not only see the next model, but to build products on top of it for anyone else. And you know that they're like your biggest competitor. It's so weird.
Yeah. That's
And
got to
maybe it's
be,
not, but it sure seems weird.
it does. It does.
All right. Well, quick note. So, as Mike always says, we have the This Week in AI newsletter, and I just want to give you a sense of like the stuff Mike and I didn't get to today. So, we have Apple Intelligence Foundation language models. A new paper came out where Apple shared exactly how they built like their Apple Intelligence. Fascinating. We talked about the White House and open source AI. So, we've got the AP article linked in there. Meta. I wanted to talk about this one, but we just don't have time, scraps their celebrity AI chatbot, which was extremely predictable, and we talked about that when it first came out. Um, Apparently, Google's Dear Sydney ad on the Olympics isn't hitting as intended. I have not seen it yet, but I have heard lots of very visceral reactions to it. I think it's like outsourcing creativity was kind of
Yeah.
the sense I got of it. Elon Musk apparently is considered buying character.ai, which actually makes perfect sense for the testing of his Grok bot. Uh, AI startup Suno is actually like going back at the music industry. So they're attacking the people attacking them. And then Salesforce released a massive Mint 1T data set that is talked about in VentureBeat as possibly disrupting the AI industry. So just to give you a sense, like when Mike and I do this every week, and that's cut down from probably 5 articles.
Right. Yeah.
So podcast is great, but subscribe to the newsletter. You get all kinds of other stuff every week.
Yeah, and you can do that by going to marketingaiinstitute.com/newsletter. And as I will always also say, if you have not yet left us a review on your podcast platform of choice, we would greatly, greatly appreciate it. It is the number one thing that helps us get in front of more people and improve the show. So, Paul, thanks again for breaking down This Week in AI.
Thanks, Mike. I'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to The AI Show. Visit marketingaiinstitute.com to continue your AI learning journey and join more than 60,000 professionals and business leaders who have subscribed to the weekly newsletter, downloaded the AI blueprints, attended virtual and in-person events, taken our online AI courses, and engaged in the Slack community. Until next time, stay curious and explore AI.